Hello everybody, welcome back to the JT Bear channel. As promised, today we're going to take a look at some of the houseplants that I've got. The cat's going crazy chasing some dog kibble in the background there, sorry about that. We're going to take a look at some of the houseplants that I've got going on here, which for the most part is Dieffenbachia, spider plants, and I've got a couple of peperomias. But yeah, now like I was saying the other day, basically any plant you grow in the house does kind of qualify as a house plant. But I was doing a little research, and generally the things that are thought of as house plants are plants that require filtered light to low light conditions, which is why they do well indoors, because they don't get a whole lot of natural light. So, without much further ado, let's take a look at, well, some of the non-pepper plants that I have growing around the house. One of my current favorites right now is the Assorted peperomia. It's kind of hiding up here behind an egg carton, because the other day we looked up and saw the cat was sitting way up on the top of the shelf like king of the hill, king of the castle. I guess he's not selling propane, so he's not king of the hill. But all the same, we've been kind of protecting this one with the egg carton. I'm going to bring it down because it needs water in, so we'll take a better look at it then. So now that we've got it here on the kitchen counter, we can take a much closer look at it. It's really, I find it quite an interesting plant. It's dead bottles from the cat and his play adventures. Because just the way it's growing, it's kind of got this trailing feature going on, and then it's producing all of these little offshoots. And this is a wonderfully easy plant to, well, propagate, clone it off. Just clip a few of these little chunks off, stick them into some soil, and within a couple of weeks, you've got something like this. These are two little end cuttings that I literally just shoved into some soil, gave it some moisture, labeled it up, and left it alone. I didn't even put a humidome over this, which you really should do for propagating by cuttings. But you can see in there, I've got lots of new growth coming up. This older leaf here is starting to die off, but it seems to be the only one. So one leaf out of all of the plant matter that I stuck in here, it's not bad. It's not bad. And really, this monster that we got here, it was like $2.50 or something at Canadian Tire. They were doing a bit of a clearance. It really wasn't that much bigger than this when we initially brought it home. You'd have to go through a lot of older videos to find the one where I actually did bring this home, but it's been pretty much neglected. It's often allowed to get way too dry, and yet, still, this thing is doing really well. So if you're one of those people who would like to have a house plant, but you think you've got a black thumb, or at least not a green thumb, these peperomias, just peps in short on the label, but peperomia, these are pretty sturdy plants, and they'll put up with a fair bit of abuse, and like I said, they're really easy to propagate, so you can fill your house with these no problem. Right now I'm kind of trying to find a place that we can put this in a hanging basket, but apparently these things kind of love to be pot bound, so I'm not going to be transplanting it anytime soon. I will be taking some more cuttings off of it though, and making more little plants. But it's kind of pretty. It looks nice up on the top of the shelf for now. Like I say, when I find somewhere that I can hang it and it'll be safe from the cat, then I'll do that. But until then, it sits on the top of the shelf behind the egg carton, because for some reason when his claws hit that styrofoam egg carton, it startles him enough that he just goes away. So I'll take it. That's a win. Need to water these two, and then we'll get on to some of the others around here. And then when it comes to watering these things, I don't know if I'm lazy or energy efficient, but I'll generally just let them sit in the sink here for a little while, soak up as much as they feel like, and before you know it, my whole kitchen counter becomes just covered in plants. Right now it's covered in mugs. I haven't done dishes yet today. But so that'll sit there, probably 20 minutes, half an hour. I'll need to dry off the leaves before it goes back on the bookshelf, but ultimately, this seems to be working to keep this plant pretty happy. So now I need another plant. So looking at the main plant shelf here, let's grab this other peperomia. Completely different style of plant, and yet still the same basic family. Pepperface peperomia. This again was just a little tiny thing when we got it. Came home for a whopping like $2.50, that same Canadian Tire sale. And this has got some great leaves to it. It's been a little bit sun damaged, because apparently this is a moderate level light plant, and it's been sitting in the kitchen window for a while until I got around to doing some research on it, and then I moved it back to the shelf. But while it was in the window, I can honestly say its colors became a lot more vibrant. Its growth has been phenomenal, and the variegation in its leaves is definitely much more noticeable. But being another peperomia, this is one of those ones that can deal with a certain amount of abuse, but probably shouldn't be put outside in direct sunlight. Just, I guess, a little bit of filtration from the window has been enough, so that I'm not giving it too much light. But all the same, it's kind of a funky, broad-leafed monster I got going on here. I've been thinking about taking a cutting from this and trying to propagate more of them, but I haven't actually tried yet, so I don't know whether or not that will work out for me. But once again, we're just going to put that in the sink to soak for a little while. Fortunately, I know all the trays that these various planters fit back onto fairly well, so not too much of a problem. Next, we've got a couple of coffee trees that are clearly suffering, but I'm kind of testing the whole root bound situation with them, because I have seen on a couple of plants that root bound seems to make a big difference. For example, this Dieffenbachia and this Dieffenbachia are both the same age. These were both, let's call them pups, like banana trees, or offshoots, whatever you want. And this one here has been in the smallest container out of, well, all the Dieffenbachia transplants. Again, this came from that same Canadian Tire sale. It was like 12 bucks or whatever, and I transplanted into 5 or 6 different containers. But this had been in a solo cup until about 2 weeks ago, and without question, these are the largest leaves on any of the Dieffenbachias that I've got around the house. Now, let's go look at the one over there by the DVD stack. This guy was originally transplanted from its smaller pot into this one. It was one of the pups, or offshoots, or whatever you want to call them, and it has grown up very well, and it's gotten, 1, 2, 3, I see 4 other plants in there now, so it's clearly doing very well that way. But when we look at its largest leaves, they just don't compare to the Dieffenbachia in the small terracotta pot. Now, this has led me to one of my, strangest theories, I guess, about Dieffenbachias, and that is that these puppies will do best when they feel root bound. As strange as that is, I do believe that to be the case. Let's give this a feel here. Oh, that's got plenty of water weight. Don't need to water that today. Need to water that other one, though. Well, now that's interesting. My camera just did some very strange stuff, and I have no idea if any of the clips I've made up to this point are still valid, but I guess I'll find out when I come to edit it. Anywho, here we've got, like I said, there's that one original Dieffenbachia. Look at the variegation on these leaves. It's absolutely beautiful. And I mean, compare the size, right, of these two leaves. These are both transplanted at roughly the same time, but like I said, this one stayed in a solo cup pretty much from the day it came home from Canadian Tire about 1.5 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago. And this one has been through a few different pots along the way. Not showing any signs of being root bound, but it's using a lot of water, putting on a lot of new growth, so I can only assume it's getting there. The big one in the huge green pot, I think, is going to be forever before it actually develops some decent size to its leaves here. Anywho, these guys need to get into the sink. Now, before anybody asks about what fertilizers or whatever I'm using on my houseplants, the answer is none. None whatsoever. And look at them. This is fabulous. So, my theory then is that the Dieffenbachia, at least this Dieffenbachia, likes a little bit of suffering, likes to be root bound, and is perfectly okay with being moderately abused and forgotten from time to time. However, I do have one upstairs that was forgotten for a couple of months. It was up in the boys' room, and when I finally did go check on it, there was no bringing it back. But a little bit of suffering apparently is pretty good for a Dieffenbachia, which actually kind of brings me to the other thing I was going to discuss today, is a little bit of suffering and spider plants. So here we are up in the studio. If there ever was a plant room full of suffering, this is it. And here we have several spider plants growing in and around everything, because much like the dead Dieffenbachia, this spider plant was also left in the boys' room. And while one died, the other got huge. Like, huge. Started putting off tons of offshoots, several of which are being rooted in random and weird containers. I'm putting that one in a mug because I want to really test the root bound theory. I think, good ceramic mug, why not? It should get root bound in there pretty quick. It's almost time to cut that one free and start transplanting some of those other offshoots. But, what do we got here? This is a 4-inch pot, 6-inch pot at best. This thing has been in it for at least 2 years, and it is doing incredibly well. Very happy with how this spider plant is doing, and I've started to put them into lighthouse dressing containers and put them all over the house. So yeah, checking just how much abuse they can take, really. This one looks like it started to root fairly nicely as well. Should probably cut that free. And while we're up here, for those of you who are interested in how the poor sand dollar's doing, the aphid wars carry on. The vast majority of this plant is dead, and I think it might just be time to say, well, it's had a good run. I don't know. Shocks is kind of against it, Fuzzy's kind of against it, but I think that might be where we're at with this one. Anywho, I've cut this guy free here, so let's take it down to the rest of the plants, see if it can avoid being consumed by the cat. So it can live on the top of the fridge with some of Shocks' houseplants, rescues that they were going to throw out at work and such. Here's one of those examples of just been putting them in lighthouse blue cheese dressing containers. I know, blue cheese, ooh, I love this stuff. I blame my mom. This is a plant that we've been referring to as the lawyer's lobby plant. Guess where I found it? Guess where I got the cutting? That's right, it was in the lobby at my lawyer's office. It's finally starting to put on some new growth. Not necessarily very impressive, but I'm hoping once it gets a little more established in the cup, it'll be, well, as nice and impressive as the one that's in the lawyer's lobby. But that one's probably been there for years, so I'm just going to have to wait. Just going to have to wait. And I guess into the bright area here, we can see silhouettes of houseplants. So again, not technically a houseplant, but here we've got a really nice catmint cutting that is spending some quality time in the front window. Not quite sure what Shocks has going on here, but seems to be doing alright. This was identified to me as a flaming caddy. I've already shown this, I think, quite recently in my video. But I took a couple cuttings from it. It seems to be quite fine. It's got those advantageous roots on it that we discussed. And here are those cuttings. Rooted themselves quite happily. They're growing along quite nicely. So this seems to be doing well in the front window. I'm going to leave it there. While not technically a house plant, we've got one of the mint cuttings there. Got some purple basil there. Yet another highly abused coffee tree. But we can see on this one that it is also starting to do the branching, like that one underneath the big LED downstairs. And down here, my only acorn squash from the garden last year. This is a variety of aloe that Shocks picked up. I think, again, it was one of those, get off of that web. It was one of those rescued from work type plants. It was going to end up in the bin, so she's like, well, I can probably bring that back to life. It's done a fairly good job. It, you know, does seem to be struggling a little bit. But for the most part, we've got new growth at the core of that, so it just needs to adapt itself to its new environment, I think. There you go. Actually, I want to show you this guy here. If anybody can tell me what this particular bug is, where'd he go? I would love to hear about it, because this little black-winged, red-bodied creature seems to be single-handedly keeping this windowsill free of aphids. If you recall the peppers that were here last year, this used to be an infested windowsill. And that little bug is the only one I see kicking around here, ever. And that one same bug, it's been months that it's just been hanging out in the window. Like I say, I don't see any aphids in here. So, is that a lacewing? I don't know. Anybody know what that bug is? Be good to know. Back to the houseplants in general though. Good watering for these Dieffenbachia. They'll be fine for probably a week. Just get it over, put it in its little plastic bowl, grab the other one here. Actually, that still feels really light. I'm gonna let that sit for a while. Paperclip, supposed to be over there as kind of a spacer, so I'll have to fix that. Alright, what's next for the houseplants, I wonder? Ooh, the ribbon plant. Let's go get that. Another example of a spider plant that's been stuffed into a lighthouse dressing jar. Another example of a spider plant stuffed into a lighthouse dressing jar. They're everywhere. Here is our ribbon plant. This has been through the kitty protection program. You may have recognized it from videos downstairs. It does seem to be coming back fairly well. We've got some nice distinct coloration coming up in the leaves. Apparently this ribbon plant has been renamed a Robert plant. It is what it is. I need to fill up the water level in my sink though apparently because it's not reaching the overflow point in this container. So we'll do that off camera because that's a kind of annoying sound at this range. That should do just fine. The biggest issue I have with filling my plants up this way, watering my plants this way, whatever, is trying to get the temperature right out of the tap. So I just kind of mix and match until it's a temperature that feels good to my fingertips, neither too hot or too cold, and then I call it good to go. Anyway, this is going to need to soak for a little while. That clearly needs to soak for a little while. What else do we have in the living room there? Here we have a little Christmas cactus that has unfortunately been very much attacked by our cat. So it's now kind of tucked away behind a few things because much like that egg carton, that seems to work. And then over on the other side here, in front of that stupid little pop bottle windmill, we have, I think this is a variation of a pythos, whatever it's called. I've had to turn it away from accessibility because cat attack. If anybody has any suggestions on how to keep cats out of houseplants, this would be a great video to post those comments on. I would love a little bit of help with that because I like my plants, I like my cat. I don't want one killing the other or, you know, yeah. I would like them both to be happy and healthy. Both. Because, yeah, I've only got one or two plants around, right? Yeah. Pan over. There's a few sitting on the counter in the sink there. Counter sure looks a lot better, though, when it's covered with the plants instead of all the dishes and stuff. I do apologize for the mess in the background. Normally, I like to clean things up a bit, but felt I was running behind today, and I just needed to get going, or I wasn't going to get it done. So, yeah. This Dief looks so nice with the light coming through it. I'd love to leave it here, but the cat would eat it. And I guess really that kind of wraps it up for my little look around the houseplants. There are way more of them than I ever thought I would have, but that still doesn't make for an incredibly huge number or a wide variety. I am looking into getting a couple others that I may call houseplants, even though they're not really. Like that savory Cuban oregano, which is also apparently Mexican thyme. I'm going to be getting seeds for those sometime in the future. It looks like 2,000 seeds or 20, so I'm probably going to be going for 2,000, which may mean a seed giveaway in the future. I ain't saying positive, but what am I going to do with 2,000 seeds? So, yeah. Anywho, if you have any suggestions as to what's going on with my Dieffenbachia and spider plants, and or your experience says I'm correct and these things just like to be root bound, please let me know in the comments below. If you have any suggestions for low light loving plants that you feel would make a good addition, maybe something colorful, something broadleafed, I don't know, throw that in the comments below. But apparently my camera battery is dying, so I'm going to end it here, find out what happened to those first clips, and I will see you guys tomorrow here on the JT Bear channel, but I don't know what we're doing yet, so yeah, I'll see you then. Bye, everybody.